Hello and welcome back to On the Workbench. Today we've got a special package here from Harry Epstein Tool Company in Kansas City. And then the final piece here, in a rather unremarkable form of packaging, is this. Cue the special music, the Made in USA. See the packaging there with the barcode? The new SK Ratchet. So let's set the other tools aside since this is what we all came here to see. In my mind, this is actually what could have been the newest Craftsman Made in USA ratchet if the professional line was still around. But it's not, since a lot of Craftsman tools have been, or at least a professional line, have been made either by Western Forge or by SK. They're both owned by the same parent company known as Ideal. And so as we take this out of the package, we've got a beautiful shiny chrome finish here. We've got a selector switch here. It's got a nice positive click. And then on the back, we've got our backing plate and our 3H anvil, and you can hear the 90-tooth mechanism. And that will give us 4 degrees of arc swing. We'll go over what that means here in a little bit here. There is no quick release mechanism on this. And it's time to go more in depth with the ratchet. A quick jump to my father's shop, and here we've got the new SK Ratchet. And for a point of comparison against what it would be similarly designed to what other SK vintage ratchets are, this is a Sears ratchet branded actually under the Sears name. And you can see the older mechanism with the bar type selector. This is a 3/8. This is made in Taiwan and has a V stamp in there. So I'm highly suspicious that this was made either under license by SK or one of their other derivatives under the Danaher umbrella. I'm not sure the age on this, but this is a very similar round head mechanism with the knurled end that you would find on your vintage SK ratchets. For comparison, here's the new one. And if we flip it on its back and we try to line up the anvils approximately the same, you can see the center of the grips line up at about the same place. The new one's just a touch longer, but most of that's accounted for by the little knob at the end. If we look head to head at the head profile, you can see here's a new one here on the left, the older one on the right. Obviously you've got that little bar selector switch that affects that head. And so that's just a quick comparison of one of the older style ratchet designs that SK is replacing. Let's get a little more in depth with the ratchet. Up front here, we've got the new SK ratchet. And then behind this for comparison, the first one is my stubby 3/8 Craftsman. This is their fully polished. Some might have considered it their professional line of ratchets. There was one that had a more shiny handle that was more similar to this, which is known as a Craftsman tri-prop or round head ratchet that uses a mechanism actually made by SK when SK was part of the French company called Faycom. And so we'll look at that one. This one has a 36-tooth mechanism. That's going to be the same as the classic and ubiquitous raised panel ratchet. So we're going to be comparing these just for some references here, to see how they compare to the brand new SK ratchet. So the other Craftsman ratchets here for comparison are USA made ratchets. And since the new SK one is SK, I want to make sure we stay USA, USA, USA. I'm going to set this one aside since I don't really have a fair comparison for this little stubby flex head. And we're going to evaluate these remaining 3 ratchets. Most people should be familiar with the classic 3/8 drive Craftsman raised panel ratchet. The round head ratchet here was, again, it was sort of kind of manufactured by the same company that makes the raised panel ratchet, but the mechanism up here was from SK Faycom. This mechanism can still be found in the Craftsman torque wrenches, although they are no longer made in the USA. But this is the Made in USA variant. I normally keep this ratchet inside my house for just my inside the house toolkit. It's got a nice grip on it, and we'll be taking a look at how they compare. And so let's get started in some head-to-head comparison. Our first comparison is going to be a weight test. So weighing in first is our SK ratchet, weighing in at 10.58 ounces. The SK mechanism, Craftsman roundhead ratchet, weighing in at 8.04 ounces. And our Craftsman Made in USA raised panel ratchet, weighing in at 8.64. Actually does have a little bit of gunk and grease at the top of the head. It's not as clean as the other ones are. And I'll be keeping track of our numbers here on the whiteboard, and we'll go through this here at the end in just a moment. So our next thing is we want to look at the length of the ratchet. So this, and the number of teeth. So the round head ratchet, or I'm sorry, the raised panel ratchet is 36 teeth. That means there's a 10 degrees of arc swing. The round head ratchet is a 45 tooth mechanism, which means there's 8 degrees of arc swing. And the new SK ratchet is a 90 tooth mechanism, which means there's 4 degrees of arc swing. So this is twice the arc swing of this, and this is 10 degrees, so we're talking even further. So we got a good range of comparison here. But if we line the anvils up head to head, you can see that the length from the center of the anvil till the end is a little different. And so if we're where that arc swing is going to matter is how far does this very end of the ratchet have to travel before the next tooth engages. So we know the arc swing, and if we measure this, we can calculate what that distance traveled about the circumference would be to know how far the ratchet actually has to move in practical terms before the next tooth engages. So now we're going to measure the length of the ratchet from the anvil until the end. So on the SK, we're looking at about 7 3/8 inches. On the Craftsman roundhead, we're looking at 6 1/4 inches. And on the Craftsman raised panel, we're looking at about 7 1/4 inches. And then we'll also proceed to measure the handle width at the fattest point of the ratchet, since that's of interest to many guys' hands. So we'll use our caliper set for that. And so for the SK, we'll be coming out to about 0.655 on that fattest part. On the Craftsman tri-prop, coming out to just about 1,000 short of 0.50. We'll just call that 0.50. And on the classic Craftsman raised panel ratchet, much wider here, and we're coming out to 0.71 inches wide. So now let's go over to the whiteboard, and I'll do some math here, and we'll be right back with our results. So looking at our whiteboard here, our first column is for our SK ratchet. Our second one is for our Craftsman tri-prop ratchet. And the third one out here to the right is the Craftsman raised panel ratchet. So the heaviest ratchet was the SK at 10.58 ounces. The lightest one was the Craftsman tri-prop ratchet, 8.04. I'm not sure that extra 2.54 ounces makes that big of a deal. The most teeth, the winner clearly is SK with 90, compared to 36 for the Craftsman raised panel, and half as many teeth as the SK is found on the roundhead Craftsman tri-prop ratchet at 45. The result of that, if you take 360 degrees, divide it by the number of teeth, gets us our arc swing. So the SK has a 4 degree arc swing, our tri-prop 8 degrees, and our raised panel 10 degrees. Now if we take the length of the ratchet, as we measured earlier, from the center of the anvil to the end, 7 3/8 for the SK, 6 1/4 for the Craftsman tri-prop, and 7 1/4 for the Craftsman raised panel. And then if we take the arc swing, which is this number here, divide it by 360, multiply it by 2 times pi times our length, gets us the minimum displacement at the bottom of the handle has to click between teeth. And so our SK ratchet comes in first at 0.51 inches of clearance at the very bottom of your ratchet. Our Craftsman tri-prop requires 0.87 inches, so 0.36 inches more. And our Craftsman raised panel requires a whole 1.26 inches that the bottom of the ratchet has to be able to swing clearly to be able to engage the next tooth. This, to me, is the biggest difference between the ratchets. And you can see a substantial difference between 0.5, essentially 0.5 and 1 1/4. That you've got about 3/4 of an inch difference between the Craftsman raised panel and the SK ratchet. And that extra 3/4 of an inch at the bottom has to be able to clear. Could make a big difference in confined spaces. If we look at the diameter of the handle width, just for holding comfort, the SK is at 0.65, our Craftsman tri-prop at half an inch in diameter, and then the rectangular cross section in the largest dimension of 0.71 with the raised panel. So this is actually definitely a little bit fatter than the Craftsman tri-prop ratchet, just to be able for ease of hold. Some guys with bigger hands are going to care if they can hold on to this. The chrome on here is definitely nice. It's a little slippery, but if you've got gloves on, I don't think it will be that big of a deal. The chrome finish on this one makes this a little less likely to slip in your hands, but you can definitely feel the way that your hand rolls right around this ratchet, that it'd be nice to be a little bit fatter. You can easily, obviously, wrap some tape on it. The raised panel ratchet just has a nice shape that fits in my hand. That's why I keep this one outside, and I've been keeping this one basically inside the house. Maybe I should move this out with my other ones of these Craftsman tri-props out to my toolbox in the garage, but that remains to be seen. But it would be a good appearance for today's video. Since this is the cliche ratchet that just what everyone's got or is familiar with, I thought that would be a good basis for comparison. This has always served me well, and it fits nice and comfortably in my hands. Now, I understand if I were working 5 days a week, 7 days a week for money with this ratchet, it might not be my favorite. And go into this fatter gripped one. It'd be nice if this were just a little bit bigger to better fit my hands. But that's just a personal preference. The selector switches, if you look by comparison to the raised panel, has a similar mechanism for how that switches back and forth. The raised panel definitely clicks easier. You can hear that positive engagement. The SK definitely requires a little bit of thumb pressure to be able to move. I don't think this is actually going to move on you accidentally with just an accidental touch. It's got a very nice slick, it's not that high of a profile over the head of the ratchet. You can see, yeah, it kind of smudges the finish of the ratchet a little bit here, but we're talking about a tool that's meant to be used, not something that's meant for decoration. Craftsman tri-prop with your classic SK mechanism. This one requires that funky bit where you've got to hold the anvil to be able to actually flip from forward to back to rotate this little tri-prop helicopter or propeller prop selector switch thingy as it goes back and forth. Not a bad ratchet. Works well. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it works. This one, it's the Enduring Classic. And this one might very well be my new favorite ratchet. It's sad that Craftsman isn't able to rebrand SK stuff anymore, but that's just the way life goes, and we'll be adding this to my toolbox, and you'll probably see me use this ratchet in upcoming videos. As I continue to experiment with the ratchet, you can see the model numbers right here on the top here, SK80200. So if you've got any questions in the future or need a rebuild kit from SK, you know exactly the ratchet number to give them. And you've got the nice reassuring USA at the top. Always nice to see Made in America products available. Well, now let's listen to the ratcheting mechanism. We can hear the 90-tooth gear head here. Let's now go ahead and listen to the ratcheting mechanism. I'm going to move my microphone here right by the ratchet head so you can hear this with maximum effect. Now for comparison, and so I think you can definitely hear the difference between the most coarse ratchet with only 36 tooth and the 90 tooth SK ratchet, and the ability to be able to flip this back and forth. Just again for reference, if our ratchets are both flipped over to the right, this one has a designation here. To the right is the letter L, which is somewhat backwards from the user. L, because that's for loosen. And then we flip it over to the left, it gets us the R for tighten. And so on the same switch here, if you want to loosen over to the right, definitely works. So these selectors work the exact same way. So if you want to tighten, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. This follows you, and you got that extra guidance here on the head of the ratchet, which I think is interesting. I don't think I would have went with R and L if it was up to me. I probably went with the L, but I might have went with maybe a T instead of an R for tighten, just because R and L looks a little too much like left and right. Or maybe I would have went with, I don't know, some form of clockwise and counterclockwise designation with a little bit of arrows that would indicate the direction of travel. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of the R and L, but if that's my only criticism of this ratchet, it's hard for me to be able to say that. On the inside here, to access this, you've got a couple hex bolts to remove, which is similar to the torque screw that you have to remove to access the mechanism on the round head ratchet, compared to the classic raised panel ratchet that requires a snap ring. You know, at least with this, I know this is probably not going to wiggle loose with that snap ring. It remains to be seen over time. Hopefully these screws have enough Loctite on them to hold them in and to be able to hold in any oil. Watching another reviewer on YouTube of this ratchet, he was able to show there was not any gasket behind here. He did have to add oil to his ratchet. I'll put a link to his video review below, and you can take a look at that. But so far, I've not had any reason to take this apart to oil it, and it's worked just fine. Now obviously with this ratchet, there is no quick release mechanism like there is here for being able to release the ball detent, to be able to remove the socket easier. You just have to use brute arm strength to be able to yank the socket off and go. So I hope you found this video useful when looking at the new SK ratchet, and have a great day. Bye.